welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your a keyblade can be an instrument too, host Madelyn.
I'm your my hands are too small and baby for a guitar, host Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to this week's show. It's my side quest, all mine, and despite threatening the past 2 episodes to do it on...
Oh, did we look up? Did we look up if he's in a video game or not?
I feel like we talked about it afterwards, and now I don't remember. I mean, not really is the answer. He's in... The problem... Sorry, listeners, if you haven't been listening the past few weeks, I've been threatening, as is often my wont, to make my side quest themed to the holidays.
Yeah.
And so I've been saying, oh, haha, I'll do Martin Luther King in video games. And I thought he was going to be in a lot of video games, to be honest. Like, I was like, oh, surely he appears in a lot of history games. And it's difficult to know for sure. I think he's probably in some history-type civilization-y games. But all of the search results are dominated, one, by AI slop of people forcing Martin Luther King Jr. to say, like, he loves Genshin Impact or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
He has a dream of Genshin. And 2, of Fortnite's March Through Time Martin Luther King Jr. experience.
Oh, right. I remember us looking at that, yes.
So it's difficult to confirm if there's other video game representation because it's all about Fortnite.
We need that Dr. King game.
I think that good things could be done with it, but...
Or even just, reference him more,
Yeah.
Like, I played Pentiment back where that came out. They talk about Martin Luther in that.
Yeah.
So now we need Josh Sawyer.
Get on it.
Get on it, I guess. The history game maker.
Anyway, we are not doing Martin Luther King. I mean, we basically just did Martin Luther King Jr. in games. There it is.
Yeah, we did it.
That's
Thanks for listening.
Bonus side quest. Thanks for tuning in. Emma, sign us off. No, just
tell us what we're actually talking about today, Mel.
So we're actually going to talk about musical instruments in games, which was actually inspired by Emma suggesting a different thing in games topic. And I was like, oh, what are other things in games that we haven't talked about? And I came up with musical instruments.
Yeah, you'll know my topic next week, in which the inspiration for it will be very out of date by then. Be very old news. But,
oh well.
Oh well.
That's also the talk this way.
Play me the world's smallest violin, as they say.
In a game.
In a game.
A musical instrument violin. But no, I feel like musical instrument modes in games have become somewhat trendy over recent years. Or there's more of them popping up. Now, you may be thinking, well, yes, Madelyn, that's because The Last of Us 2 invented the guitar.
Yeah. As we all know.
Which, like, in all seriousness, I do think that mode has inspired further musical instrument modes to appear in games.
Oh, absolutely. True.
Yeah. As well as the dominance now of the musical wheel as the way these more naturalistic instruments have to appear.
I mean, of the 4 that we identified that use that give you more free reign over the notes that you're playing, I do think it's interesting that 3 of them at least came first to PlayStation.
Sony loves music.
Well, I just mean...
No, I know.
They
that it's like
maybe
within
have that infrastructure that they can maybe offer to people developing for them.
Yes.
I wonder. Yeah.
So we'll talk a fair bit about that. But yes, it is sort of like there are, to my mind, kind of 3 main types of appearances of musical instruments in games. We'll probably be talking the least about a character who uses a musical instrument as a weapon. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. I'll give 4. Weapon is related. So there's a lot of kind of gag weapons, or the Yakuza class where you are a rock star, right? Or the whole idea of Brutal Legend or Hi-Fi Rush,
yes.
or what was any of the kind of gaggy, over the top, campy action adventure type games. Like there's a lot of like I'm hitting people with a guitar kind of games. Which I watched a fun video of categorizing all of the Super Smash characters into which of them can canonically play instruments. And I did enjoy that she was like, I can't, like Bayonetta does have musical instrument weapons, but at no point does she engage with them as musical instruments. So can't give it to her.
I agree. I don't think Bayonetta plays an instrument.
Correct. There are some musical instrument weapons that are played more as instruments, but Bayonetta really just shoots people with a guitar, basically.
Sure.
Anyway, so there's that. So there's musical instruments that are used as weapons. We probably won't talk that much about those because that's like pretty much all there is to it. There's a lot of those. We like the idea of someone getting hit with a guitar for comedy.
It's funny if it makes sounds.
Correct. Sounds funny. There's also musical instrument as like puzzle solver or warp mechanic, whether as kind of a bonus or as a key element of the game. Obviously, the prototypical example here being the ocarina in The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, where you have to play certain little melodies on the ocarina to cast spells or travel around or whatnot. A lot of similar type things in other, I had forgotten, this came up in one of the videos that I watched. I had forgotten that Animal Well, which I played, I guess, a couple years ago now, also has that kind of like, you play a flute and it has special patterns that unlock things. So those are kind of two. So, if the first one is there's no mechanics, it's just a skin, then there's we can play a musical instrument and it does something. And then there are the two categories of there's a musical instrument based like rhythm game in there. So a la Guitar Hero or Rock Band that exists in your game. And then finally, there's the Galaxy Brain Chad version, most recently popularized by The Last of Us 2, which is like, there's an instrument that is used for like narratively resonant moments maybe, or not, but that you are playing in a way that's a little bit more realistic than those unsophisticated rhythm games.
That's not how they talked about it in the interview, but
it's not. I'm sorry, that's it, but it is a little. No. They were very thoughtful about it not being a rhythm game.
Yeah.
But there is a little bit of a like, well, a rhythm game.
I did think so. There was an interview with,
or like basically, I just want to close this thought. They're like, this instrument can't be too fun. Anyway.
Well, they said like it's like rhythm games tend to be sort of action packed and kind of showy.
Yeah.
Which they are. That's their point.
Yes.
And that wasn't like what they wanted them to feel from the guitar sections of The Last of Us Part 2. But I also thought the point that this was an interview with Grant Host and Mark Burrows, who were at least both game designers at Naughty Dog, talking about this guitar minigame and how they made it. And I also thought it was interesting of like, in rhythm games, typically you're pressing like either the arrow keys or one of the face buttons to line up with things. And they specifically didn't want anyone to have to like look down at the controller while doing this, because the point is the emotion the character is going through. So they want you to be looking at the character. And that's how they came up with like using more like the analog stick and just a single button instead of someone having to be like, which one's square again? They don't really play games.
How much of that also do you think, this is a cynical take, but how much of that was also Sony being like, we'd like for this game to sell some PlayStations, so please don't rely on people knowing where the buttons are?
I don't think that came up in this, to be honest.
So that they did. There's a so yeah. Let's talk about The Last of Us 2's guitar in detail here, because yes, that interview and then the sort of even expanded GDC talk version of it was really interesting and was a really kind of in-depth look into why they designed this guitar segment to be the way that it was. So if you haven't played The Last of Us 2, I guess we'll try to avoid the big spoiler here.
Well, there's not a need for spoilers. The guitar
Yeah.
is a big part of the narrative thrust. There's several sections in the game where you are put in control of a character playing the guitar. And then they also, because the mechanic is already there, there's a free mode where you can just sort of mess around with the guitar with various characters and various types of guitars.
So as Emma said, and as these two developers talked about in detail in both the interview and the GDC talk, yes, they put a lot of thought into what the kind of way the player would interact with the guitar, and also put a lot of thought into how is this a mechanic that is interesting and masterable, both for people who are very familiar guitarists and for people who do not play musical instruments. Which I think is always the interesting challenge of any of these games that are trying to be something that isn't a guitar, or any of these instrument things that are trying to be anything that isn't a Guitar Hero clone. It's really hard to take the idea of you're playing guitar, or even more so the idea of you're playing a piano, and map it onto like a DualSense. So it's challenging. I never loved the wheel. I'm not very good at it, and that's why I don't like it. But I like my rhythm games because I'm better at them. But whatever.
The Last of Us Part 2, in comparison to some of the other ones that use this, does also stand out, and there's not a rhythm element at all.
Yeah.
You can it shows you what note you should be playing during the story sections. But you can do that at whatever rhythm you want. You don't have to try to match the tone of the actual song that you're playing.
Yes, it works out well in The Last of Us 2's case. I mean, I think... So they talked in the GDC talk about how at first they were like, well, do we really want to trust the player with the guitar in these segments, right? Like, these are pretty important, if not like narrative beats. These are pretty important thematic beats to the story. And if the player is just a mess, like, are they gonna get the point of this? But I think that they're helped by the fact that the characters, Ellie, right, playing, is learning the guitar. So it's nice that they have that kind of narrative backstop of, well, if the player's bad, or if, like, if the player's really bad, then that's okay. Like, that's possibly character correct. So I think that helps a lot in this case. It was interesting for me to think about as I was reading more about this mechanic. Yeah, the challenges of having a musical instrument that is emotionally important to the game and being able to account for players that are going to have a wide variety of facility, both with the mechanic in the game, but also just with like general, as we talked about in our Rhythm Games podcast, right? Mm-hmm. People who just have independent of their gaming ability, have a wide facility with like music and rhythm. Mm-hmm. So that makes these kinds of things really difficult. And they talked a lot about how do we make this, like I said, satisfying for guitarists, but also approachable and not like just incredibly dissonant for people who don't know anything about music.
There's also just like a development aspect to this. They talk about like they started building it out because at the time that they were making it for one song in particular, but they knew there was going to be other songs. They just didn't necessarily know which songs. And so having things like changing what's on the chord wheel, like switching between different types of chords like you can do now in the game, was because they didn't necessarily know what songs were going to have to be supported by the system. And so they're making it so it could support whatever narrative necessarily wanted to do with it.
So ultimately the guitar in this game involves strumming on the touchpad, which is apparently something one of the developers in the GDC talk was like, I really wanted to make something for the touchpad. I kept looking for something to make on the touchpad. I couldn't find the right thing. And then finally, here it is.
I imagine when you have one benefit of developing just for one system off the bat is that you can think about the controller.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, there's this neat thing on the controller. I guess we should do something with that.
So you do that, and you then also, they have, again, in the GDC talk, they talked a lot about how they thought about constructing the wheels, where basically it's based around the circle of fifths, which is a whole music theory thing of chords that sound good together, basically. And so their idea being, okay, that gives us like a nice music theory basis for the nerdy guitarists to understand why we did it this way on the wheel. But also it gives us some insurance against players who are bad, because these chords all kind of sound good together. So even if you strum the wrong one, like, we'll flash red that it's wrong, but you're not just going to sound like a cat banging on a piano. Which I thought was pretty smart. And so then they end up having 5 of those wheels, which you don't always, like, in a song, you're utilizing a wheel. But if you're doing free play, you can just, like, swap between them and access different chords. Interesting tidbit.
People like to play a lot of different songs using this system. So.
They sure do. Yeah, at the end of the video, they were like, yeah, there was a lot of feedback to this game, but we were really glad people liked the guitar. Mm-hmm. Which was nice. Yes, I thought it was interesting too. They were like, we originally wanted to have 4 wheels, and then Take On Me required its own wheel because it's in a different key. Which at first we were annoyed about, but then we realized having 5 wheels from the perspective of like switching around your thing, like you're only ever 2 wheels away. Mm-hmm. So they were like, it actually didn't change anything for us. Like, you might be 2 wheels away from the wheel, but you would have been that way with 4 too. Mm-hmm. Which games are so crazy.
So of the other games that are like this, there's also Stalker 2 has a guitar that is pretty similar to, that is wheels like this. I also think those two are similar because there's a lot of emphasis on like the realism of the finger placement on the guitar.
Yeah.
The last of Naughty Dog, of course, also has like, although there's like thousands of different sounds for different types of guitars, and you know, the motion capture, and the guitars have rotating tuning pegs and strings that vibrate and whatever.
Yeah.
Stalker 2 is in first person, so I was watching some video of that, and it's kind of mesmerizing to like watch the fingers because they're like right in front of you. It's like you're really playing the guitar.
Whoa.
And then there's also Chia, which has a ukulele, and is pretty much like the Last of Us system with the wheel, but you play rhythm game songs in it. Yeah. Where you have to hit the notes at a certain time during musical sequences throughout the game.
The Chia stuff was sweet. The Chia ukulele also
Plus there's some puzzle solving element.
Yeah. It is also an ocarina.
Yeah.
In the metaphorical sense.
One of the PlayStation channels posted like Chia playing the Last of Us theme on her ukulele.
Awesome. That's correct. Side note here, when you were speaking about the realism of some of these, the article you found about the real life guitars for The Last of Us Season 2 was crazy.
Yeah, so this was kind of hard searching for in a number of different ways. When I searched like musical instruments in games, I got a lot of like admittedly pretty cool, but not what I was looking for, videos of like playing video game music on weird instruments.
Right.
And for The Last of Us, looking up stuff about the guitar, I also got a lot of stuff about the guitars in the TV show. But there was a very interesting interview with the prop guy. What's his name?
Nevin Swain,
about like making the guitars or designing the guitars, which they worked with Taylor, the guitar company or maker or whatever, I don't know anything about guitars. And they made a ton of guitars. And in fact, apparently they shut down their assembly line for a little bit so they could make them some custom guitars. But there's also like deciding like, okay, like how do we make this guitar look worn? And is it worn because someone uses it a lot, or is it worn because it's rotted, right, from being in the apocalypse?
Yeah. Anytime you read about, like, it's cool when you read about someone's job that's like, that's crazy that still gets to be a job. Like, doing props in Hollywood feels like such a weird little thing that it's hard to imagine, how do you become someone who does that? And this article felt like so representative of that. Particularly given, like, Taylor made a replica Ellie guitar that already existed, and still he was like, but that really wasn't quite right for what we needed, because it had like an electric pickup that's, you know, so you can plug your guitar into an amp even though it's an acoustic, right? But he was like, we didn't want that, so we couldn't use that. And yeah, then the weathering process, he was like, there's one case that we just like went way too far on. Yeah, we couldn't use it. Basically, it sounds like, I mean, given the Last of Us fan base too, and everything around that show, it sounds like a nightmare to me.
And you have to get the guitars pretty early too, because they emphasize like, yeah, the actors need to practice
right
with these, because they're gonna be playing them to some extent in the show.
Yeah. So it's not that many video games are getting adapted into television shows or whatever, but it's sort of wild to think about, like, oh, like, whatever, you designed a guitar for in your game, and then somebody's maybe got to be able to go and make a correct replica of it.
Yeah. The Fallout show just had some, like, sick practical puppetry in the last couple episodes that I would really like to read more about, so props are cool.
Yeah. I think about this all the time. You know, I do like a puppet thing every week, and every week it's like, oh my god, you made that?
Anyway, the only one in this category that has not attempted a string, well, I guess it is still stringed, but it's not a held
could
string.
Be playing an electric piano.
You're so right, yeah.
You give him a keyboard.
Anyway, the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth attempts to do the wheel system with the piano, which for a non-player like me sort of feels like it is approximating sort of what the piano is like, in that one hand is moving more than the other hand, but they both moving. But for piano players does not feel great, which I can imagine.
Yeah. It's, I mean, piano is kudos to them for trying.
I mean, course, it's fun even when it's very hard.
Like, of course, there is so much Square Enix music that is pretty piano based. That's iconic. That you sort of have, you know. Cloud playing guitar would be fun and cool. It's not really, you know.
Yeah.
The classic tunes are you'd want to have a piano for.
Yeah.
But it's kudos to them for trying, because at least with a guitar, you're moving like, you have 4 buttons. Normally you're moving your 4 fingers and thumb. Like, even if you're using a more traditional version, you can at least, like, you know, it's not really a guitar, but a piano has 88 keys. And so figuring out a way even to approximate, like Emma said, using 2 hands simultaneously in a kind of rhythm and melody way is clever, even if it doesn't reward a real pianist at all.
Yeah, so the way this one works is you don't press a button or strum the touchpad or anything to, like, play the note. You just flick the analog stick in the direction of the note, and it plays it.
I was pretty bad at this in the game.
I think that it also struggles from a classic rhythm game problem that comes up, I think, in a lot of rhythm games, where sometimes, like, it abstracts it a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't play all the notes that you think you're supposed to play.
Right.
Like, occasionally, in rhythm games. I'm not good at rhythm games, so take this with a grain of salt. But occasionally an easy mode can be a little harder than like the normal one.
Right.
Because there's less notes, and sometimes you're not playing the note that you're expecting to play.
Yeah.
And I think that happens with some of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's rhythm game segments. Because I found some very easy, and I found some almost impossible. Admittedly, the more I had to use my left hand, also the harder it got.
She's not ambidextrous.
Yeah, not really.
Baby gamer hands.
Exactly.
Interesting in that game too for them to create that. I mean, that game also has very classic like quick time event rhythm game kind of stuff. I mean, not very classic. It's cool how they do it. The like swooping around the scene
rhythm game system
thing.
As well.
But it's interesting and cool that they created a piano system that was so different from that.
Yeah.
But also I was really bad at it, so thank God it wasn't required in any way. Something about, maybe I've played too many rhythm-y games, but something about moving the joystick is not as naturally rhythmic to me. I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, you sure, yeah.
Like my ability to move the joystick correctly to the beat is not as strong. So basically I'm bad at games is what I'm saying.
Yeah. That is what you're saying.
Which is fine.
I also think there's like in the rhythm game section, like you brought up like Guitar Hero and Rock Band, which are like the classic, like you're just pretending to be in a band in some capacity. But there's also a lot of like narrative games where you are in a band and there's like a rhythm game element to it. I had this written down as like a subsection of these.
It was Deltarune, right? And like
there's Night in the Woods, After Love EP. Until Then is like you're learning the piano. The piano they just throw the piano minigame at you at a certain point and they're like, you gotta be good now. You didn't do this at all before, but now here you go. Deltarune has a part where you're being a band. I feel like I just thought of another one, but it's escaped me. This is more like crossing over with the instrument as a weapon, but Unbeatable, also a rhythm game where you are both in a band and theoretically using your instruments as weapons also.
What's the game we played at PAX?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember what it's called.
They're kind of in the desert.
Yeah, I think it's on my wish list still, but I can't remember the title off the top of my head. But yes, there's some where there's some where the instrument is a weapon, but you're also kind of playing it and not just like hitting with it.
Right.
As well. But anyway, band practice performance tends to just be like a mini game, rhythm game inside of like a narrative experience. And sometimes how you do in it can have an impact on the narrative itself.
I do feel like the rhythm/instrument game, here's a hot take, like might be ascending into fishing like minigame status.
I mean, it's kind of, it's kind of already there.
That's what I'm saying.
I was watching a video that was not about fishing. It was about like the games released on Steam in the first week by Jenna something. And there's a fishing game and she was saying like it seems like the fishing minigame that was kind of popularized in the AAA space has become like a macro just indie genre of its own.
That's true.
And I'm not sure the rhythm game has exactly taken that same progression, but I do think it's kind of become its own. I mean, rhythm game is already a macro game, right? But there's certainly more things that are like shaping the experience around the rhythm game, like putting a wrapper around the rhythm game into something that appeals to the normies and not just the people with insane hand-eye coordination.
Right. So that means soon it'll be overexposed in about 3 years. The rhythm game.
Yeah.
We'll be like, that's enough.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah.
Put the guitar down. The music theory of it all is kind of interesting to me. You know, it's interesting to listen to them talk about in The Last of Us, because that's just not something that I, despite being someone who sang for a long time and was involved in music for a long time, and like that's still something that's helpful for me to have in my current work, I can't say that I put a lot of thought into what it takes to construct the notes that the player has access to in these types of games.
Well, you never really, well, maybe you did a little bit, but you didn't do a lot of like composing.
No.
So, I mean, I obviously, I think you probably know more music theory than I do. But I do think that's something you get into as you start doing a lot of composing rather than necessarily just playing.
Right. But even as a games player who is often thinking to myself, whoa, video games are hard to make. It hadn't really ever crossed my mind, because I've played, you know, normally when we're doing these side quests, I'm like, I haven't played so many of these. I played 3 out of those 4-wheel games that we talked about here. And I can't say that it crossed my mind. Like, Chia's is whatever. It's not whatever. It's a cool little mechanic, but it is just a like C major scale, I think. But it's interesting, and I watched a video that kind of got into this about Ocarina of Time as well, and how it has this, you get 5 notes on the ocarina, which are in a D Dorian mode, basically, which is a chord progression, chord structure. And basically this video was like, that's like actually a really weird one. That's like not an intuitive thing, like scale to give the player access to at all. It does lead into the kind of like weird medieval sound of the ocarina, but you know, like when the Last of Us guys were thinking about what are the chord progressions for the guitar that we're giving people, it was like, oh, we have some pretty normal ones that we're doing for like these songs. They did mention in the video a little, they were like, we did sort of feel like, oh, you know, the player doesn't have a wheel for some of these like really normal chord progressions, but they can always cycle around and find them if they're high skill enough that that's something they notice.
Yeah.
Basically. They're like, we don't have a G major situation, which is a really common kind of chord progression in guitar, because the songs you have to play don't have that. And so we didn't need to like double up. So interesting to think about how you target for anyone who's going to notice this will be able to figure out how to do it. But in Ocarina of Time, yeah, we have this, even though she was like, many of the songs are still constructed in C major, but it makes for a lot of like weird or interesting soundtrack texture, because all of these soundtrack songs have to start with a measure or two of you playing on these 5 weird notes, and then it can expand into the orchestra version. And that's crazy. That's not something I would think about at all.
Sure, yeah.
Like, it's 5 notes.
Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to say about rebirths. I say like this isn't tangential. But like, you know, the emphasis on the animation in The Last of Us Part 2 is something that they really stressed.
Yeah.
They're not worried about that in Rebirth.
No.
They just have a stock piano animation, and honestly, that's probably fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I know those things are serving different purposes, right? I'm not watching what Cloud is doing when I'm trying to hit the notes correctly in the rhythm game, right? Versus I'm really watching the characters when I'm doing the Last of Us Part 2 thing. But it does show that you can have a more in-depth, robust system for emphasizing instruments without necessarily having to add that much to your animation budget in the way that I'm sure this mode did for Naughty Dog.
Yeah, really complicated.
Yeah.
What they did there. But, it's big emotional moments, so it's probably worth the budget in that sense. Whereas Cloud, as much as the video of Cloud playing Dearly Beloved or whatever tugs on my heart piano strings, it's not like the piano mini game for Cloud is a mini game.
Yeah.
So, and also, like, some of these guitar modes are interesting. I don't know why. I mean, I guess there's just more of these, and the guitar is more central to what's happening in The Last of Us. People love those characters, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, like, so much of that seems to have inspired people to want to actually play the guitar. And you can kind of, like, sort of learn from the hand placements that you see there. I mean, that would be a weird way to learn guitar, but you could. You put a video of someone doing that for Chia as well, that her hand placements for the chords are reasonably correct for the ukulele. Now, should we be encouraging more people to learn to play the ukulele? That's an open question. But you could. And it's something about my gut instinct is like, well, does watching Cloud accurately play the piano? It doesn't teach me in the same way that watching somebody play guitar accurately does, right? I can learn the chord progression from seeing it. Watching Cloud play the accurate notes doesn't actually teach me anything very actionable because it's way too complicated to follow.
Yeah.
So let the man pound on the keys.
Yeah. Anyway, canonically, my Cloud sat down at the piano, rolled around in a circle, and then got up, and everybody told him that he sucked. So...
I think that's canonically accurate. There's no reason he would be good at it.
How'd they know in the flashback? How did Cloud describe that everybody just knew instinctively that he sucked at it? Who knows? But I think it's canonically. Yeah,
correct.
True.
I have to shout out there are a couple of games that use real musical instruments. Right? Things like Rocksmith, where basically many of these games are structured around either like your controller microphone or computer microphone is picking up on the audio basically and telling you if you're right, or you've like done a MIDI connection to your computer basically. So that was interesting, but a Reddit thread about that led me to Cello Fortress, which was cool as heck.
Yeah, it was.
More game live performance things like this, please. Cello Fortress, I think it's a Dutch project, which of course there's like actual funding probably, is a video game. It's like a video game live performance event where basically there's a team of people who are playing as tanks, and then there's a cellist who, with the music being played, controls like the fortress basically and trying to destroy the people. And obviously there's a whole subset of like games YouTube content that's like, I played Elden Ring on a Guitar Hero controller, and this is sort of that. But I thought it was cool. Or,
it is pretty cool.
Gosh, I'm trying to remember. I think there's a GDQ run that I've watched before that's like maybe a guy who set up like a custom saxophone input controller.
That's sick. I would like to see if there's a way to play like Trombone Champ with your actual trombone. I'm sure someone's done that.
Yes, it's Elden Ring on saxophone, where he set up kind of a custom input so certain tones correspond.
Horrifying. Sounds horrifying, to be honest. So
yeah.
There's a lot of multiplayer games that don't necessarily have the like freedom of input to play your own music. Like it's just like an emote or sort of expression that you can do within them. But it's a way of communicating something by playing certain songs or playing certain instruments. One example I found was Sea of Thieves. And there's an interview with some of their music people talking about like if someone's playing an instrument and someone comes up to you and also begins playing their instrument, they will automatically be set to like the same time that you're playing as and be like harmonizing with the person who is playing. Which sounds like a deceptively complicated system, actually, but is also just like extremely cool and probably very good for like social interactions in that game, even among players who aren't necessarily talking to each other.
Yeah, finding ways for music to bring us all together.
Exactly. The universal language.
Yes. No, I thought that was cute too. But you're right. I'm sure it's way more complicated under the hood than you would think. There should be more games where you sing or play music to your plants.
I feel like I'm just forgetting a lot. But
sure.
Yes. So Spiritfarer is one where you can play your guitar to like your plants on your boat and they will grow faster. I put in just because this was like an interesting. You don't play instruments in Utah Zion, but it's about gardening and the plants that you plant like make sounds. And so you can make sort of like different soundscapes based on the plants that you put in different areas. So it's kind of like you're composing little environments for yourself.
Yeah, not a lot of games that ask you to compose.
Well, very skill-based, you know?
I guess, actually, in saying that, you do get to compose the town theme in Animal Crossing.
That's
if
true.
You want.
Yeah.
It's not exactly an instrument, but you just sort of telling Isabel what to hum. And I know that's skill-based, but would be interesting to see. It's always fun when you can like make characters repeat something you've done that's stupid. So more of these games doing like at some point Cloud plays the piano and somebody else goes and plays that dumb riff you did later is a fun way to wave at the player and say, hello,
that is
you're
fun.
Playing.
I think the closest I can think of is in Kentucky Route Zero, there's a segment where you choose like the next lyrics to the verse. But that's specifically like, you know, there's one of three choices and you're not setting like the music. You're just setting the lyrics of the song specifically. Yeah.
I did, of course, think of your, ongoing drumbeat of more games should be musicals when picking.
Very
this
true.
Topic.
Yeah. But I do feel like most musicals are still rhythm game things.
Yeah.
I don't know how else you would necessarily do it, but it feels like there must be some way. So
you could do, this is more a game as a play, right? But you could definitely do a Telltale dialogue style I'm an actor portion. Yeah. But yeah, it is tricky to think about. Well, just because you can't trust a player to be good enough, right? A quick time event with music is an easy way, or a rhythm game element with music is an easy way to put something out in front of the player that is familiar, that deals with a way of interacting with the controller or the game that is familiar, right? You have to be able to time button presses to play any game to a certain extent.
Shout out to Hi-Fi Rush and its emotional rhythm segment where Chai is supposed to be gathering his resolve to like break out of a cage, and I still did not know which button was which on the Xbox controller, and so had to restart it like 4 times.
See? That's why I'm saying somebody at Sony got to those Last of Us guys and they said, this is a big flagship game. We know there's going to be a TV show coming out in a couple years. And this is a game that we think new players are going to want to play. And we wanted to sell some of those sweet, sweet PlayStations. How about you guys have a version of this where people don't have to be familiar with our classic buttons?
It is interesting, like, speaking narratively, because one of the articles I read was, like, about the TV show and, like, the guitar scenes and, like, the way they didn't work in the TV show.
Yeah.
Despite working for a lot of people in the game. It's very interesting to think about, like, the different ways you can use sort of musical numbers in those formats, right? Because when those happen in the game, you've just been doing a lot of stuff. And then you have a moment where you're sitting, and that's okay because you're about to go back to doing a lot of stuff. Unlike in the show where they do nothing.
Yeah. Well, but also more charitably, where you, the viewer, are engaging passively and watching them regardless of what they're doing.
Yeah.
But yes, unlike in the show. When does season 3 come out?
Probably soon. They're like shedding actors. They've recast like 3 people.
Really?
Not like major roles, but yeah. Anyway, the last instrument thing I'll bring up is you can also use them sort of narratively without necessarily the player having to fully engage with that. And I think like the Outer Wilds is a really good example of this, where when people go to space in that, they take an instrument, and so by using your like signal scope, you're able to find like other travelers up in space, always playing their instrument no matter how far away you are. There's one uppercut piece that was talking about, like, in one failed run they had of that, they went really, really, really far out, and then turned around and had the signal scope and could, like, hear all 6 of the instrument people you can meet, and they're all, like, playing at the same time. And that's cool. That's cool things you can do with music and characters playing instruments. That I think is, you know, a lot of storytelling potential in the instrument itself, of course.
Let's see more of it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of music in games, of course. I don't mean to say that there's not, but yeah, that's a cool example of the musical storytelling. And yeah, let my buddies in games play songs for me more often.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, okay, here's a Madelyn core take. Yakuza 9 will have a wheel-based music simulator. No question.
We'll see.
Either Ichiban or Kiryu deciding to learn how to play the guitar.
I'm actually surprised. I think this is actually a really bad idea. People would hate this because they're gamers. But you know how in the Witcher show, in like the first season, there's like the bard that follows Geralt around and everybody loves him? Toss a coin to your Witcher?
Yes, toss a coin to your Witcher.
There should be a game where a bard follows you around.
People would hate that.
And sing songs about your exploits.
People don't like that.
I know people don't like that, but that's because they're wrong.
That's taking I've got a chatty companion who talks about what's going on.
And when you fall off the cliff, they compose a song about it. This is the time the hero tumbled down the mountain.
People would hate that.
I love it.
It's a cool idea.
They don't offer you hints when you're stuck on a puzzle. They just start composing about how the hero doesn't have the smarts to overcome the puzzles in front of them. But then when you succeed and do something really cool, they're also, they're just here to call it like they see it.
I support this as a free add-on to Baby Steps.
Exactly! That's what I mean. Wouldn't that be improved if there was a bard following?
It'd be like, the cactus again.
Anyway, that's my free game idea.
There you go.
Take it away.
Dog.
Take it away, game developers.
Well, Emma, are there any instruments in games that you want to see? We pretty much only get guitar, a little bit of piano, like lyre-based, like, old school guitar, right? Or flute thing.
There needs to be like a semi-autobiographical game where you have to play the recorder.
That probably exists.
Show it to me then.
I'll look it up after the show.
Okay.
More percussion.
Yeah.
I think more characters should be drummers.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I have anything else like good that I'd like to see. I mean, yeah, more brass also, like the trumpet or whatever. Trumpet, which is basically pushing buttons anyway.
Trombone champ, man.
Yeah, I know.
I know it's a different instrument, but it's basically the same instrument.
I'm just saying, it's surprising we don't have more brass, given that is like you literally push buttons to play those. That is what it is.
True.
So let Ellie learn the saxophone. Just kidding, that might be hard.
I think doing a stringed instrument would be very hard. A stringed
Like a
instrument where
bow.
you use a bow would be very hard.
Well, did you know that Samus is proficient in the double bass?
Sounds good.
She plays it in the celebration at the end of one of these.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that Ganondorf plays the pipe organ?
I think there's at least one Zelda game where the final boss has him like playing a dramatic tune as you approach him.
I think that might be what it is.
Yeah. Which is sick.
More
So.
villains who play a fun, evil riff for themselves.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, on that note, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
What characters do you think are the best musicians in games? Would you like to see someone pull out their sick viola, and how on earth we would create a mini game that would allow us to play the viola? You could probably do it. You could do buttons and like having to move the joystick to bow or something like that. I don't know.
The problem is that the face buttons are on the wrong side.
Nobody would know that, Emma.
Okay, but...
Okay, so you make them do the directional buttons and then bow with the right thumb.
Yeah,
that'd be really hard though, because
weird.
that's not how our hands approach video games anymore.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Anyway, do you want to see more of that, or more brass, or more cowbell, or anything else? Did any video game inspire you to pick up a real instrument? Are you someone who plays a real instrument who is like, none of these things are at all like playing the piccolo? If you have thoughts about this or anything else we talked about this week, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you ought to subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe to Talk This so you never miss an episode on Sundays. Emma, remind us what we're talking about next week.
Next week, for our old game, we're talking about Geometry Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And for our new game, we're talking about Look Outside.
And then in 2 weeks, we're talking about Martin Luther King Jr. in games.
Yep. That's why it won't be timely.
Yeah.
That was my idea.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's it for this week's show. Thanks for listening. Emma, take us to the bridge.
This week, I hope that everything is in tune and in tempo.